Well, welcome to Tracking TV. My name's Chris Gosling, and we're off again with one of our little jaunts through the undergrowth of the UK's haulage and transport industry. Two topics for discussion this morning. One, if you were up early and noticed it, we had a fascinating piece from Southampton City Council, who say that they're going to charge lorries £100 per visit. I stand back in amazement, and I think probably many of us do. We've had a similar thing, if you remember, with Dover just a short while ago. What the mighty Southampton City Council are saying is that any vehicle that doesn't comply with Euro 6 will be charged £100 for actually entering Southampton each time it enters Southampton. So take a view on that and look at, let's say, container wagons. Some vehicles are doing 2 or 3 jobs a day out of the docks, so that can mean £300 added to your bills. I guess the reality is that it's going to start shaking people up, and it will shake up all kinds of stuff. The other thing that's worth bearing in mind as well, of course, is that ordinary transport, i.e. vehicles going to shops, supermarkets, whatever you like, any large vehicle that enters Southampton is going to pay that bill. I don't know how many vehicles Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda, whatever, send into the town just to cater for the food requirements. I imagine there's a few hundred a day, because it's a town with 250,000 people who need to eat and drink and use stuff and buy stuff and goodness knows what else. So the reality is that if every vehicle that goes into Southampton is Euro 6, it's going to be using up a lot of Euro 6 vehicles, isn't it? Especially when you consider, of course, that London's similar kind of ruling will give hauliers a problem in the first place. It's an interesting one. Let's just see what anybody's saying out there. I've got a gentleman saying, see why the country has gone to poo. With the councils all about money, money, money with them, yet they won't repair the roads. There's a degree of truth there, isn't there? Southampton City Council are saying the issue really is to do with getting emissions down. But according to the port, the DP World boss at DP World's container terminal in Southampton, which, as we all know, is a really busy place, he says that the numbers are coming down on pollution anyway. So in reality, the target that they've got to reach is not very far away, and he thinks they can do it quite easily without doing silly things like this. Nonetheless, who knows? The reality, I guess, is if they pass it, then we're all going to find out what happens next. From the point of view of shippers and shipments, then I would guess it would affect the way that people consider Southampton as a port, because, let's be blunt, it's an in and out. So let's say if a vehicle goes in, collects a box, drops a box, that's one visit, that's £100, that's split between those 2 boxes, but of course you've got to take the box back. So in fact, it's the equivalent of £100 surcharge per box. With shippers paying, I don't know, $1,000 to get a box from the Far East to the UK, £100 is a sizable little addition, isn't it, really? So it's like having a £100 surcharge on actually dealing with the port of Southampton. That's going to be a scary one. Good morning, Steve Arsenal McKinney. Steve Arsenal, I don't know. Do you play for them? No, you don't. Hey, and also, oh gosh, yeah, Mike Brooks has just added not to forget the boat show and all the lorries that are coming in. That's deeply true as well. There's loads of vehicles coming in for all kinds of events as well in Southampton. It's a busy place, it's a popular place. There's loads of people doing loads of stuff. So that's a consideration, isn't it? The other thing I wanted to mention this morning and see whether you had any thoughts about is this thing that's ongoing at Felixstowe, it seems. I haven't done much chasing up today, but yesterday there were some ludicrous waiting times going on again. And I talked to the mighty FTA yesterday afternoon. There's a very nice young woman there called Natalie Chapman, who gave us a chat and told us the ins and outs. If you haven't seen the video and you're interested in what's happening at Felixstowe, then take a look. It's on the Facebook page and it's also on the YouTube channel. And Natalie essentially was saying that she had spoken to Felixstowe and Felixstowe had said, you know, we're doing our best, we'll get it all right. But the reality is, will they in a reasonable time? That's a good question. And the other question that we have to ask is the duration of the ongoing problem and how much it costs. Yesterday or the day before, I had a message and a conversation with a haulier who said that on one particular day he had a vehicle stuck on the dock for 6 hours. I guess, now he didn't give all the ins and outs, excuse me for a minute, I guess that he actually had planned that vehicle so that it was going to spend maybe, I don't know, a couple of hours on the dock and doing whatever job, and then he'd planned it into some other work. But instead, of course, because the vehicle was stuck for 6 hours, at some point he had to make a decision to hire in a tractor unit and driver for the day, and that cost him 350 quid. The reality is, if he hadn't done it, it would probably have cost him a lot more because he had a crane to work with the truck, the load, whatever it was. And that would have cost him loads of pounds to have standing about doing nothing. So he had to hire in, he had no choice. But in addition to that higher cost, he had 6 hours of driver time, 6 hours of vehicle time, standing on the dock doing nothing. And then just to add to the general joy, he also had to pay for an overnight because his driver couldn't get back or get back to the appropriate location inside his working hours. This is scary. You have to admit that if someone makes a major cock-up, then they should really pay the costs incurred by the people that they work with. And that's certainly true at Felixstowe. The understanding and the feeling we get, I think, from the Port of Felixstowe's conversation with the Freight Transport Association is that Felixstowe might deal with the big companies who can exert some pressure on them. But the smaller guys, the 4 or 5 unit guys, the owner drivers, who have spent hours and hours standing on the quay waiting for stuff to happen, are going to get walked over, I could say, I guess. And it's not very nice. Your thoughts on this? What else have we got coming up on the screen? Cosmo says, I guess the hauliers at Southampton will increase their price to cover their cost. They're going to have to, but aren't they, really? Someone's going to have to take a grip and say, well, because I'm operating, I don't know, Euro 5 or whatever vehicles, I'm going to have to charge an extra 100 quid. Well, how the hell is that going to work? Because I don't know, really. The reality, I guess, is that if Euro 6 vehicles aren't available, other vehicles will have to be used and people will have to pay the cost. It's really quite a scary one, isn't it? I think this is really interesting. I honestly don't think that from the council's point of view, I don't know, is it making money? I don't think that's what they're after. I think they are desperately after getting their pollution numbers down because they're on a kick in from the government if they don't. You have to wonder what goes on in their heads though, because obviously this isn't a joined up thinking exercise. I think they've had lots of comments and lots of feedback from the local authority. Sorry, to the local authority, from the local population. But in reality, it's a Labour-controlled council, and they've dug their heels in and said, this is what we're going to do. Hey. So we have to look at Southampton, and I guess we have to look in some degree of horror and say, what's going on? That's a nice one. Tony Critchley, I really like your comment, mate. That's excellent. Next time it'll be parking charges on the dock. So your waiting time goes suddenly from 30 minutes to 4 or 5 hours, and there's only an hour's waiting time allowed before you pay a bill. Hey, that's a nice idea. I'll have to, we'll send a line to Clements Chain down at the Port of Felixstowe and suggest he might like to do that. I'm sure it's a good way of defraying the cost of the dock. You can just see it, can't you? 10 quid an hour for parking on our dock because we've delayed you. One of those things. Tony Critchley, I really love that. And someone else has just said, I wouldn't put it past them. And I think that's probably true. We do have issues, don't we, with the mighty Port of Felixstowe. I've been dealing with them now for, I guess, personally probably since 2004, when I was filming stuff for a channel called Felixstowe TV. And you know, the people who are there are essentially the same people. Some of the people are the same. There's new people, there's others gone. But the reality is that the Port of Felixstowe tells the story that it likes. The Port of Felixstowe, I would say, doesn't really, they work on the airport principle, if you want a description from my point of view. You know, when you go on holiday and you're at the airport and your plane is delayed and no one tells you anything. I once spent a whole day being told nothing by an airline from Cyprus waiting to go on holiday, and it was a loathsome experience. And I get the feeling that Felixstowe, well, I know that Felixstowe always have worked on the same basis. They tell you as little as they possibly can, and they always paint a rosy picture. It's a bit of an interesting one, and it's a bit of a worrying one, because I honestly think that in this day and age, all of our people out there, I know we've got a lot of extremely bright people sitting in cabs out there today, and those guys, and you all know, I think, that if you're told what's happening, it doesn't become as bad. You can understand the problems, but the reality is that the Port of Felixstowe, its official channels, tend to say, oh no, we're getting it right, oh no, it'll be fine, oh, it'll be good tomorrow, oh yeah, you know, and that's really not what people want to hear, especially when they go in at 5 o'clock in the morning and sitting about for a couple of hours. Okay, from my point of view, that's all I really wanted to talk about today, but if you've got any topics to raise while we're on, we've got another 5 or 10 minutes, I guess. If you're bored with me, do say so. If you want me to go away, do say so. But if you've got a comment to make on anything that we've talked about lately, then I'll be glad to hear it. I've got 2 more little things I'd like to raise with you. No, probably 3 actually, more little things I'd like to raise with you. Yeah, Tony Critchley's come back to us and said it's strange that so many places need trucks but fight against them. Why not be truck friendly and help regenerate your town or city? What a nice point, Tom. I do like that, and I think that's the direction to go, really. One of the reasons behind Trucking TV, is I think most everybody knows, is when I started it, I thought what I want to do is try and explain the transport industry to people, to the population, to explain what drivers do. That's why we started doing the Driver's Day series. We'd still like to do more of those, incidentally. If you fancy a day out, me coming out with you for a day with a load of cameras and all kinds of rubbish and filming what you do, so let me know if you do. But that was the original intent. The original intent for Trucking TV was actually try and show the world what drivers actually do, because I don't think people understand. I haven't driven a truck since, bloody hell, 50 years. But I spent 3 or 4 years driving back in the day when there wasn't any such thing as an HGV licence. My goodness. You passed your car test and you jumped in the truck. That was scary. But there you go. That's what Trucking TV is about. That's my little bit for today. I'm going to mention one more thing before I... No, I'm not. I'm going to mention 2 more things before I go. One, we want to do more support for Paul Anstey, a man called Paul Anstey. Let me start again. Paul Anstey, who is a rescue and recovery driver. He drives a truck going around rescuing mainly cars and small vans and things, but he is running a campaign called Slow Down and Move Over, which we're right behind here at Trucking TV. We don't do much about it because the reality is that it's quite difficult sometimes to get the information. But a lot of recovery drivers, as you know, are at risk every day, whether they're recovering heavy vehicles or cars or whatever. And an RAC operator died just recently, which I thought was intensely sad. He was just doing his job and someone in the car hit him when he was recovering or rescuing a vehicle, and he died, poor man. I'm really sad to see that. And this happens also, as we all know, to heavy recovery drivers. It happens on a regular basis, and it ain't what should happen. Okay, that's point number 1. We'll be going back to Paul with a bit more, getting a bit more information on his campaign, seeing how that's going. Chris Grindy, good morning, young sir. How are you doing? My last little thing is something I mention quite regularly, and you'll probably think I'm being a pain in the arse about it, but there you go, guys. As everybody knows, Tracking TV comes out of my thin little wallet, which has hardly got any pennies in it at all. That's not true. But the reality is that I'd like a bit of help, so I can spend a bit more money on making Tracking TV content. If you've got £2 or a £5 a month to spare, should I say, and who has? I know you haven't, poor boys. Okay, if you've got a couple of quid or £5 a month that you can afford to put towards a worthwhile cause, I have a page on the internet on a site called Patreon. Patreon actually hosts all my videos as well, and they operate a scheme whereby you can subscribe for a small amount of money each month. That money comes to me and I can spend it on making more Tracking TV. Let me give you an example of what I do. This coming Monday, for instance, I'm going to go out and film with the guys on the M11, and they're clearing up the crap that people leave beside the motorway. And I just want to show people how much crap there is, how dangerous it is to collect it. What an awful bloody job. Drivatizer is the word, because that's that funny yellow stuff you get in bottles. And that kind of thing, from my point of view, it's I don't make any kind of charge for my time, why would I? But it's going to cost me about 30 quid in petrol or 25 quid in petrol or something. So that kind of expense is what I'm looking for some help with. And if you can afford a couple of quid or a £5 a month, go to www.patreon.com/trackingtv and you can subscribe. You also get some insider contents called Tracking TV Insider, where we have a chat about things that we don't publish for a week or 10 days. And you can get a little bit ahead of the game. You can also make suggestions as to stuff you'd like to see. And so there you go. I'm going now. I've said my piece. But don't forget that if you've got a couple of quid a month or £2.50 a month and you'd like to make a small donation, it doesn't have to be forever. You can try it for a while and see how it goes. Give us a look. Okay. Thanks for everything, and I'll see you soon. Let's just find where the right buttons are. And press one, and wait again, and press one again. See you soon.